Gigi, welcome back to the show, hermana. I'm so excited to see you again.
I'm excited to see you too. I feel like motherhood really, really suits you. You're glowing, you're smiley. It's so good.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really big on like breaking the stigma, if you will, or just like this toxic ass narrative that I have found is pervasive around motherhood. I really fell down the rabbit hole when I was first just even thinking about this and just the negativity that is out here on the internet. People thinking that like it's terrible. And maybe there are terrible moments, but I think we need to just rebrand motherhood as this thing that doesn't need to like suck your soul dry, but maybe this thing that like elevates you to another level and actually encourages you to pursue even more for yourself and to like just hold yourself to a higher standard and everything around you versus like when I experienced motherhood through the elders in my family, it just felt like something that you sacrifice all your hopes and dreams for. And I'm just like, I'm tired of that narrative. And I'm really excited to talk to you about why we need to be busting that whole shit down and really like giving people a different perspective of what motherhood looks like because you are out here thriving and living your best life and also helping other mujeres do the exact same thing.
I am so glad to hear everything you just said. And I feel like every sentence that you just said is something we need to unpack. I agree with you completely that motherhood does need to be rebranded. And I think the key element, and this is something that I personally experienced when I first became a mom, is we want to become mothers and we want to bounce back to our former selves. And that bounce back culture or concept is beyond the physical, right? Like there's that pressure of like, lose your weight and get your waist back or whatever. But I think that that bounce back element is permeating into the person also. And that's where I think the misery of motherhood comes in. What we are not told, and I think that this is a huge disfavor to women, is that when you become a mother, you need to expand. This is a key word that I learned through motherhood that it's funny because in entrepreneurship, I always use that word instead of growth, right? Like at some point, as I became more deeper into my business and developing the things that I do, it was like, it's not just growth, it's expansion. Because growing, you grow upward, right? Like you grow this way, you grow one way. Expansion is like, you got to grow in all directions. There's a completely different element from growth to expansion. It's why I hardly ever use the word growth anymore. It's expansion. And what happens is that when you become a mother, you have to expand. And we want to just add this enormous component to our life, a human that depends on us 24 hours a day, but we want to continue to be the same person, the same version of ourselves that we've been.
Yeah. Like you're just going to pop baby into this life you've already built. That shit don't work like that.
It's impossible. And I feel like if we were to tell women that part of the truth that it is, you need to learn to be more kind, more patient, more strong, more discerning, more intuitive, more so many other things. Then the mom during pregnancy would work on those parts of herself before pregnancy, deciding if she even wants to be a mom, because that's a lot of work. And what happens is there's one of two things that I've seen, and I can only speak to my experience and to what I've observed, but one of two things happens. The mom that becomes a mom and says, holy crap, I have to elevate myself in order to not drown in this. I have to really zero in on where is this challenging me as a person and expand in that space however I need to. And I got to do it quick because this baby ain't going to stop crying while I figure it out. There's that mom. And that's the mom, one who can do that, who can realize that that's what's needed of her and does it, is the one that, like you say, like, oh, you're thriving most of the time. But the moms that don't realize that that's necessary, they drown in motherhood, and I hurt for that mom because expansion is an option, but it's not easy. And there's other things that are necessary, right? And it's easier to expand into motherhood when you have support. And it's easier to expand into motherhood when you have the financial backing. And it's easier to expand into motherhood when you have a good partner. And it's so much easier, but it's not impossible to expand into motherhood without all those things. It's just harder. It's one of the reasons that I am so passionate about what I do in helping women to establish that financial comfort, that ability to say, I am not going to work. I'm going to focus on this kid and on who the hell do I need to become in order to be able to not drown in this. Because when you can't do that, when you don't do that, it does feel dreadful. And I'll be completely honest with you. I am thriving as a mom, but I'm not always thriving as a mom. There are moments that I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Somebody send Jesus because I can't anymore. Like, I'm done. And also something that I think is true of motherhood that a lot of people don't embrace is the duality of motherhood. It can suck, but it can also simultaneously be the most incredible journey and the most delicious, most satisfying journey of your life.
Yeah. And such a parallel to entrepreneurship, right? Because I mean, there's the same shit. There are days where you're just like, why the fuck don't I just get a job? Like, I'm just out here struggling for what? And then there are days that remind you, like, oh shit, I am in my full fucking power right now and I am unstoppable. So I think we just have to be okay with understanding that, especially in today's society where everything is highlight reels and everybody looks like they're winning. Ain't nobody winning 100% of the time. Ain't nobody loving motherhood 100% of the time. Ain't nobody succeeding in business 100% of the time. And we need to have these types of discussions so that people feel like there's nothing wrong with you because you're going through the motions of being a human being, trying to figure out how to balance everything it is that you want to do, including how to be a good mom.
And I think also it's really important to, in order to do that, it's to have that deep connection to yourself, right? And that's one of the things that I live by. Like, you have to have the courage to do what you want in your life. And that goes into everything. That goes into how you run your business, because I can tell you how to run your business a certain way. Somebody else will tell you how to run your business a different way. And a third person will tell you to run your business a third different way. You're the one that needs to say, hold on. I want my business to feel like this, to accomplish this, and to give me this. And then when you decide, what do you want your business to do or be and feel like, then you say, who's going to help me get this? Which one of all the gurus and coaches and people out there is the one that's going to help you to do it? This is the way I want it. But it comes from you deciding. And I feel like the same thing happens in motherhood. You need to decide, how do I want this to feel? How do I want this to be for me? And then you can say, who and what do I need to get rid of in my life so that it feels that way? And who and what do I need to bring into my life so that it feels that way? And a lot of times we don't do that in life, motherhood, or business. A lot of times we're just like this. We're supposed to follow this path, take these 5 steps, go this way, and then do this in this order. And you and I both know that shit don't work.
Absolutely not.
You and I both know that, you know, that pattern. I just got off a coaching call with a client, and she calls it in her business, she calls it the roadmap. And she's like, the roadmap doesn't work. The roadmap doesn't work because not everyone's heading in the same direction. Not everyone is trying to find that one destination. We all have different destinations. That means you have to pave your own way there. But that requires courage, and it requires a connection to yourself and really deciding, like, this is the thing that I want to do, and this is how I want to do it, and this is how I want it to feel. And I'm going to be unapologetic and courageous about it, whether it takes me a year, whether it takes me 10, whether it takes me my lifetime. And sometimes in motherhood, that's hard to do because you have all the influences of like how your mom wants you to do it, how your mother-in-law wants to be involved, how your tia did it, how your best friend, whatever, you know, and you have to be courageous and you have to say, no.
Yeah. Speaking of courageous and following your own path, you have had many lives as a business owner. So you have been out here for over 2 decades. Is that right? Just you've had several businesses.
21 years. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. So take us back, right? For folks who don't know your story, what's been the evolution for you as an entrepreneur? And then we're going to dive into what's been your evolution as now in this new role as a mom.
Oh man. I thought we only had an hour.
Yeah.
When you put this on my calendar, it's at 1 hour. Come on now. My evolution as an entrepreneur, the nutshell is I began in entrepreneurship when I was 18 years old, and I had no idea what entrepreneurship was. I thought this was just a way that I was going to be able to pay for my books in college because I was studying something else. I was studying journalism, right? Which is what I've been doing since I was 15. And it's what I knew how to do since I was 5. Like I've been on television since I was 5 years old. And it's almost like I was groomed into journalism. Communication has always been really natural to me. On camera, microphones. I'm more uncomfortable speaking. Like if you were in front of me right now and there were no microphones and no cameras, I would feel so much more awkward than knowing that there are several thousand people listening to everything I'm saying and that like there's a microphone, right? And so the evolution has been, I opened my business to support my degree, right? I was getting my degree because that's what you're supposed to do. Even though I'd been actively working as a journalist since I was 15 years old, doing the graphic design for a newspaper, interviewing artists like Carlos Vives and Paulina Rubio and Cristina Saralegui when she was still like doing television. And just, I wanted to go to school and like formally let everybody know through this degree that everything I've been doing for the past, at that point, 5, 6 years was real, right? Like the self-doubt, right? Like, what the fuck? And then fast forward several years, and because I'd been dancing since I was 5, when I got out of high school and I was already doing journalism stuff, and I knew that that's what I was going to go into college for. I was like, I have a scholarship, but I still got to pay for books, still got to pay for gas, I still need to get a car, I still need to have a phone, all these other things. And like, we're immigrants. I can't just tell mommy and daddy, like, can you buy me a car? Can you pay for my shit? Like, no, I had to decision myself. So I figured like the only thing I know how to do is dance. The only thing I thought I knew how to do when I'd already been doing graphic design for magazines and for the newspaper and interviewing people is dance, because it's the thing that I'd been doing the longest. And so this is like, just in hindsight, the way that the brain works is like, no, I could have probably made so much more money if I had just gone into doing graphic design for somebody else, like other magazines and other people, worked on my own time, like shit you didn't know when you first start, you know? So I opened the business. Fast forward 21 years, the dance studio's been around all this time. We were ranked top 3 dance studios in our city for several consecutive years now. I've lost track. We've won national competitions. We've done all those things. And I've retired my parents into that. So my parents don't work for anybody. They manage the business. They have all the fun. I go in just to like put out fires once in a while, or, you know, just I like keep an eye on what's going on, but they do all the things. We have an hora loca, and my dad's the person up on the stilts. He's like 60 something going on 25. It's amazing, you know? And I've been doing journalism ever since, but it got to the point that managing the business, we at some point had multiple businesses. We had the academy in 2 different locations. I was studying for my master's and working in radio, working in television, doing all the things. Obviously felt like I had to go for my master's to prove more things to more people, right? Like, if I don't have all the things, who's going to believe me that I've been doing this long and that I'm actually good at it? Because God forbid you watch the work I do and that it speaks for itself. No, degrees, accomplishments. And so when I was in that process, I completely burned out. I lost my vision while I was driving on 95 one day, and I heard all the cars zooming and I couldn't see anything, kind of like when you rub your eyes together and all you see is the black spots. And I was like, I'm going to die on this road. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I was able to safely pull over and not hurt anybody else. And I was like, what's going on? You gravitate to, I have cancer, I have lupus, I have, you know, a tumor. Like, you start researching, like, what are the things that make you feel this way? Went crazy at doctors, getting blood work and doing all the things. And it's like, no, you're just severely depleted. Like, your body is this far from shutting down. I hadn't had my period in 3 months, and I wasn't worried because I also didn't have time to have a relationship. So I know I wasn't pregnant. I was like, wow, this isn't so bad. No period, no problem. It's like losing my hair, huge breakouts on my back because I was just doing all the things. Being busy for everybody else's definition of success. My mom's definition of success is degrees. The radio's definition of success is morning shows. The television's definition of success is either news or sports, right? I tried news. It was depressing. I couldn't do it. I went into sports. And it was like, I never felt satisfied. There was still a part of me that was like, I needed to do one more thing, one more degree, one more accomplishment, one more raise, one more show, one more gig, one more. And it was like this never ending hunger for more accomplishments, when on paper it was like, nothing is missing. And when I had that health scare, I was like, why am I doing any of this? And why is it not enough? And I realized that it's because it was everybody else's definition of success. Right. And so I dove into several years of unlearning and undoing and reframing my life and really asking myself, what do I want?
Was that through like personal development that you did on your own, or did you work with a coach, or was it a combination of things?
At first, I went very deeply into the spiritual part. I'm a very spiritual person. And so I went deeply into the spiritual part of things. And so I did have, for example, because I am a nerd, I got certified in Reiki and a lot of energy healing. I've never used it for other people. I always use it on myself for my own energetic recalibrations. When I realized that this was something that was reflecting professionally in my life, then I started working with a coach, because I was like, oh, wait, this isn't, because when it comes to energy and stuff like that, I feel like a lot of those answers are within if we just shut up and sit down, right? But when it comes to the implementation in the tangible 3D space of business and career and all these things, I feel like without a coach, it just doesn't work the same way, exponentially faster when you have a coach. And so I started working with a life coach. And when I saw what that did for me, I was like, holy crap, this is it. Like it's looking inward and having the space to have somebody mirror back to you. What are your truths? What is your BS? And what is your greatness? And then you build based on that. And so I was able to restructure my life. I was able to rebuild everything that I was doing in a completely different way. And that led me to the opening of my other business, Seizing Happy, which is my main focus right now, leaving media completely, finding the man of my dreams, building a beautiful marriage, buying multiple properties, having a delicious baby. And everybody tells me, they're like, oh my God, you're everywhere and you're so busy. And I'm like, I'm in my pajamas 95% of my life. Like, I'm never busy. I actually sometimes have to call people and be like, can somebody give me something to do? Like, I'm so chill. I've never worked less in my life and I've never made as much money as I make right now in my life. And that's the fucking vibe. Like, that's what I want. Now, that's not to say that things aren't being looked at, that things aren't being taken care of, that I'm hands off, nothing ever happens. No, you work. You need to make sure that you're leading the ship. I have a small and mighty team behind me, right? You need to make sure that you are the right leader, that everybody understands their why, their tasks, what's happening. You need to keep your creative energy, your leader energy, your health energy, your spiritual energy, like all that shit needs to be kept up. And that is work. It's the self work. It's a different type of work than when you're in the business, hustling in the business all the time, like nose down doing the work, but it's still work. It's just a different kind of work.
I think that's the work that really is the transformational stuff, right? Because when I think about me earlier on in business and just in life in general, like in my 20s and stuff, I just felt like busyness equaled success. And then at some point, it was just like, okay, I got all the accomplishments. I have all the things. I'm still fucking miserable. Where's the disconnect? And then that's what leads you down the road for most of us to like that personal development of that inner work. Because I don't know about you, but I never saw any type of self-development, personal development work being done in my house. Like that's not even a term that my family is familiar with.
Can I just say, I'm still looking for that shit in my house. Not the one I live in, but like the houses where I grew up in, there's times that I'm like, guys, look, if we try to, ay, por favor, no me venga con esa bobería. And I'm just like, all right, well, fuck it, whatever.
Yeah. Like you can only worry about you at some point.
I can only do me. I can only do me. Like there's a human that depends on me and a marriage I'd like to keep healthy. And thus y'all do whatever the fuck you want.
I'm a big fan of Mel Robbins' Let Them theory that she's recently been talking about with her new book. It's just like, you just got to accept people for who they are, let them be who they are, and figure out what capacity you can entertain them in your life, because we are too grown out here to be trying to change other people, and it's just not the vibe ever. So you've had this incredible success as a business owner. I know you've been very candid about how your perspective on motherhood has changed. From what I remember reading about you, this was not even something you were planning to entertain as part of your life.
Absolutely not. Motherhood was never on the to-do list at all whatsoever. And there's multiple reasons why. Number one, I worked with kids for a really long time in my dance studio, and I worked with kids of all ages. And one thing that I saw that never failed was there were really, really great parents with demons for children. Just bad kids. Like, I'm not even talking about behavior. I'm talking about like bad humans. Like they were just born bad, like just bad. And then there were horrible parents, horrible parents. I've had parents that have shown up under the influence to pick up their kids that I've had to call an officer and say, this is her parent. I can't leave her with this woman because this woman is visibly drunk. I can't in good conscience put this kid in that car. And it feels horrible because then I'm like, well, now what do I do? And this is after calling the next of kin. Nobody answers the phone. This kid is just left there. Like I've seen some shit, and the kids are amazing, disciplined, driven, talented, kind, forgiving of their parents, of other children. And I was like, I am a business owner. I am a business person. I don't like these odds. I don't like this 50-50, no control of what you're going to get. Like, that's just not how I do my life. I take risks, but I take calculated risks. I like decreased margins of error. This is not my vibe. And then aside from that, and I only realized this after I married my husband and we had a conversation about parenting. He always knew from the beginning, motherhood was not something I wanted, and he was okay with that. But one time we had a conversation, we were talking about like parenting and having kids and stuff like that. I think we might've been talking about like somebody that we knew that became parents or whatever, or that got pregnant. I remember where the conversation started, but I heard myself say, I have worked so hard to build what I have, the financial freedom and comforts that I have, that I am not willing to have a kid set me back all the way to scarcity, to having no money. Like I can't. And my husband said to me, why do you think that having a kid is going to set us back? And I was like, well, because kids are so expensive. Like kids are just like really expensive. And I'm just not. And he was looking at me and he doesn't realize it, but he was coaching me. He was asking me the questions and he was like, but what makes you think we can't afford it? And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, it got me thinking and I was like, there's nothing that we can't afford. We can definitely afford a kid. I just think in my mind, having a child meant that it was just going to drive your finances to the ground because kids are fucking expensive. They're super expensive. But what I didn't, my mind, my like subconscious mind had not come to where I was, where it was like, no, I have built an abundant life where I can afford a kid is not going to drive me into how I was raised, where having a kid was expensive. It was hard. You had to sacrifice financially certain things to be able to feed me. You had to, I mean, I was born in Cuba. It was hard. It was fucking hard. There were days that I had to eat like pan with sugar at school because there was nothing else to put in the fucking bread. Like, and so when you grow up like that in your subconscious mind, you're like having children is financially strenuous and I can't afford it. And I've built all this. And when I have the kid, all of it is going to go away because that's just your past experience. Where I grew up, when I came here, we were never wealthy. Like everything was comfortable and everything was good. Like when I was growing up, it wasn't like that. And the people around me were always struggling to put their kids through dance and to buy them whatever for Christmas. So that was my growing up definition. And it stuck with me so hard that even when I was no longer in that position, that's where I thought I was. And like, that's just a wild part of like where your mindset and your subconscious mind sometimes hold you back. And when my husband asked me, like, what makes you think that we can't? And I was like, oh, there's no truth to that. It's just my preconceived notion. It's what I've been led to believe. Then he was like, so does that change anything? And I was like, not this instant. I have to sit with this new knowledge. Like I have to sit with this and process and see like WTF, you know? And then we came back to that. And I told him, I was like, look, I realized that a big part of my reservation was that I had this preconceived notion that isn't true because we're no longer in a position where having a kid would be financially strenuous on us. So let's do this. We're going to revisit in 3 months. And it was a January. And I was like, I'll start taking like prenatals and stuff like that, just in case if we decide in January, then my body will kind of already be a little bit more prepped. If not, my nails and my hair will look great and nothing happens. Fuck it. And within a couple weeks, I found out, within a couple weeks, I was pregnant.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. But I hadn't decided.
Right. I was going to say, I'm like, I don't think that was enough time to process, like, and come to terms with the information that you had.
There was no processing done. There was like new awareness and then like, oh, what do I do with this? Right. And then wanting to walk myself through scenarios like, well, what if this? What if that? There was no time for that. And I found that I was pregnant at 8 weeks and I had my first period. I didn't miss 2 periods. I had a period, like the first 4 weeks, I had a period and then I didn't. My period is clockwork. And I was like, this is weird. And I was like, impossible. Like we're not, and we were intentional about making sure that, like, because we hadn't decided. So we were always careful and stuff like that. One fun night and you forget how biology works. And then I saw that positive pregnancy test and it rocked me. And then you go on the spiral of like, holy shit, it says pregnant. And then it's like, how do I feel? And then it's like, I feel nothing. And then instead of, well, why? And all that, like, instead of utilizing all of my coaching tools, it was like, I'm a terrible person for feeling nothing because everybody on Instagram sees their positive pregnancy test and like, oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm so pregnant. And everybody's crying and I don't feel anything. And then it's like, that's it. This baby thinks I hate him or her. And now I'm a bad mom. And what kind of person doesn't get happy when they're pregnant? With all the people that are in IVF and all of the people in IVF are going to hate me because right now I don't feel anything. This is my response to like an instant downward spiral. So I sat with that pregnancy test for the whole day. I didn't tell anybody because I couldn't, because I didn't know what was going on. I took 4 other pregnancy tests because that one had to be wrong, obviously, as well as the other 3. Everything was wrong. And then when I told my husband, I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how I feel about this, but I know he's going to be happy about this. I wanted to make it good for him, even if I didn't really know where I stood in the process. So for our very first Valentine's Day, I did a scavenger hunt through the tiny apartment where I lived in. We used to live far away from each other. We lived in different cities. We had a long distance relationship at first. And when he came home, I had a scavenger hunt laid out for him that ended in the bedroom though. And so I did the same thing for him this time. And the scavenger hunt ended in the bedroom. But in the bedroom, when he walked in, the pregnancy test was there. And so I'll never forget, like, he asked me, like, when he saw it, he was super happy. He goes, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he gave me a hug and he's like, "Are you happy?" And I was like, "I'm scared." That's when it hit me. Like, yeah, I wasn't happy because I knew instantly in that moment what it meant for everything. I had an instant awareness of like, my life is not the same. Everything is different. Everything has to change. I know what it means to be a mother. I helped to raise my little brother. In fact, I was looking at my son looks just like my brother. It's like fucking deja vu. It's so weird. Like I knew what it was going to mean for me as a person instantly. I knew what it was going to mean for our marriage. I knew what it was going to mean for my business. I knew what it was going to mean for my life. And I knew that there was so much of that that was also unknown. And that terrified me. It wasn't a lack of joy for the pregnancy. It was a full on awareness of possibilities and change. And when I was able to process that after the fact, when I heard myself say into my husband's like neck, "I'm scared," it rushed to me and it was like, I am a good mom. This is what makes me a good mom. Jumping around and crying doesn't make me a good mom. It doesn't make me a bad mom either. But this definitely doesn't make me a bad mom. This makes me a good mom. I am instantly aware that everything needs to change right now. And I'm also aware that I have no idea what it's going to change it to. And that's where the fear came in. The unknown of like, what am I going to do now? That put me in an instant space of like mandatory expansion. I had to change the way that my business was. My husband and I were planning on moving out of the country that year. We had changed our business structures. We were building everything to go live a year through Europe. And immediately I was like, I am not going to go do a pregnancy in Europe because I don't know what this pregnancy is going to lead to. And the way that I was structuring my business at the time was also not conducive to maternity leave, like the things that I was going to do. And I had just restructured it into that so that we could move. And I was like, now I need to restructure my business again to facilitate pregnancy because I don't know what this is going to be like. I don't know if I'm going to have a great pregnancy or if I'm going to have one of those pregnancies that you're in bed for 40 weeks, you know? And so it was like, I knew that all those things had to happen. And it put me in an instant space of like, expansion is necessary now. I must apply all of my tools and all of my knowledge to the next 30 something weeks. My life has to be completely transformed in the next 30 something weeks. There's no plan B. There's no other option. There's no one to call. There's no one going to come save me. It has to happen. And I have 30 something weeks to do it.
That's amazing because we literally have had the exact same like thought process through this like journey of pregnancy and motherhood. I had the exact same reaction. I was not excited. I was freaking the fuck out. I was having this existential crisis of like, oh my God, everything that I've built is going to now potentially be derailed, destroyed. How am I going to have the capacity for any of this shit? It was not what you see on the gram or anywhere else. Maybe that's a natural reaction to people like us who have been very intentional about designing our lives. You know, I look at even my husband's mom and dad, like they were 19 years old. You know, there was no thought process around like having a kid at 19. I'm like, I made it up to 38 years old, not having a kid. And so like just you get used to what life is like too, right? I think when you're of a certain age, you're kind of just like, you're in a homeostasis. And now it's just like, oh shit, this is like a totally different vibe now. We're going to have to do something completely different.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Like you intentionally positioned your office that way. Your book is in the background, your shelf, it has like the right distance between this. If I were to take a queen sized bed and shoved it into your office right now, like how would that feel?
Yeah, it don't even fit. right now.
Right. Like for some people, a kid does not fit in their life. And I feel like entrepreneurs who've built a certain life, a certain lifestyle, a certain system, a certain rhythm, a kid don't fit. And so that's not to say that you're not happy that it happened. That's again, this goes back to the duality where it's like two things can be true at the same time, where you can become pregnant and be like, okay, I want to do this. Cause that's something else that I didn't mention. But like when I went on that inner spiral of the pregnancy, I asked myself, I have a very, very deep connection to my soul and to my body and to my God. And I ask all the difficult questions, and I am shameless in asking questions to my guidance and my intuition. And I said, do I want to terminate this pregnancy? Because initially I was like, if I don't feel like how everybody on Instagram feels, if I'm not crying, if I'm not like, oh my God, I'm so happy. This feeling that at that particular moment, I could not identify as a full on awareness of what it meant. It just felt numb in that moment. I asked myself, do I want to terminate this pregnancy? Because I knew I needed that answer before I talked to my husband. I needed to be sure of what I wanted to do about the situation before I told anybody, and everybody was like, oh my God, this is so great. And then maybe I would have been doubtful, but could have been influenced, could have been confused, could have felt whatever. And when I asked myself that question, I got the strongest, most powerful full body no. Do I want to terminate this pregnancy? The no that I felt in my entire body moved, like it shoved me into my dresser. And I was like, all right, well, we're keeping this. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do next. Here we go.
Yeah. That's decision awareness number one.
Number one, we're keeping this. We're going to go through with this. We'll figure it out as we go. And I feel like when you have that awareness of self in life and in business, it allows you to really be in charge. One thing that I also did that after the fact had so many mom friends tell me, I wish I had done that. I wish I would have had the boundaries and the guts to do that. I told everyone when I'm in the hospital, I don't want anybody there. I told everyone when I come home with this baby, I don't want anybody in my house. I think it was like a month before my parents met my baby. Before there was nobody in my house but my husband, myself, my baby, and my dog. And I remember when I first thought of it, when I first was like, what do I need to feel good? And the only thing that came to me was alone. Because I know that if God put a baby in my belly, not my husband, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I know what I need to do. And I can't do that if I have you telling me how you think I should do it. And I can't do it if I have somebody else telling me that blah, blah, blah. And I just was not in a space to receive anything. I was in the space of, I need to connect with my son and I need to be left the fuck alone to figure this out. And this is not something you can do for me. This is like spiritual awareness. Nobody could do it for you. You need to sit down and be quiet and listen to yourself. I can't do it for you. And so I was like, I need to be alone. And I said it to everybody. I go, I'm just going to let everybody know, thank you in advance, but I don't want anybody in the hospital and I don't want anybody in the house. I will let you know when I'm ready for guests. And I don't know
what was the reaction to that? Because I could tell you on my side of the family, it was very contentious.
In this regard, I'm kind of lucky because my mother-in-law lives somewhere else. She lives in another state. I feel like she would have understood more than my parents. But also, I have a very deep, loving relationship with my parents, but I also have lots of friction, especially with my mom, because we're very alike. And she knows that when I say something, like she's already tried for many, many years, like to convince me. And now it's like, okay, well, now I understand that when she says something, that's just what it is. And I have the option to either listen, but if I try to fight it, then it's going to be worse because then yo me pongo pesada and I'm like, oh, it was going to be a month. Now it's going to be 5. Like, don't try me. It is what it is because I say that this is what the fuck it is and period. Right? Like, it's my life.
Now, fact, you got to be like that sometimes because the codependency of Latino mothers especially can be so real.
And she said to me, well, what if something happens when you're in the hospital? Like, why can't we be there? What if something happens? And I was like, what are you going to do? You're going to go in there and sew me up? Like, are you going to fix it? No. You know what happens if something happens? That something is happening and I'm worried about you having a nervous breakdown in the fucking hospital. And I can't worry about you. I can't worry about I can't worry, period. I need to be calm, cool, and collected. I need to be the cucumber. And I can't do that when I'm worried about all of y'all in the hospital acting up or like worried or not eating, not sleeping. Like, no, go home. You're not doctors. You can't help me. If something happens, either the doctor is going to help me or I'm going to die. And my husband has instructions for that. Like, it's really that, it sounds horrible, but like, it's that fucking simple. Like, that's it. And when we came home, it was the same thing. She was like, well, don't you need help? And I was like, no, I have a whole ass man. He helped make this baby. He'll figure it out. He has instructions too. Like, I'm really good at giving instructions. I'm very good at delegating. I've spent years learning how to do that shit in business. I'm really good at it. And my husband follows phenomenal instructions. One of the reasons I love him so much. It was tough because I knew that they weren't happy. And I hate to make decisions where like the people I love are not happy about them, but also it's not about the people I love. My life is about me and my family and the family that I'm building. And I read something recently that said, and I'm paraphrasing, something like, never ask to sit at a table where your wife and children aren't welcome, even if it's my table. And it was like a mom, like saying like, the family that you have is never going to be more important than the family you're building. The family you're building is the most important thing. And so for me, what I needed to be a good mom, a calm mom, an aware mom, was to be left the fuck alone. That's what I needed. And that's what I asked for. And that's what I got. And it was the best choice I ever made. And I don't regret it for a second. And I don't care. And funny that after the fact, like my friends would text me, I'd answer like 8 days later. They're like, oh, what'd your mom? I'm like, nobody's come to my house. I don't want anybody at my house. And I'll tell you what, I have a dozen friends who sent Uber Eats to my house and they would text me and they were like, hey, there's food at the door. I have a dozen friends who sent, like, who cooked me. My favorite food is soup. I have soups that they make that I love. And like, they cooked food, dropped it off at my doorstep, texted and said, there's food at the door. Didn't knock, didn't ask to come inside. I want to hold the baby. No, get out. I made it very clear. I don't want anybody in my house. They still were supportive.
On your terms.
On my terms, right. And so like, that's something else too that I think is really important is like, I don't think that people who want to be involved in postpartum necessarily do it for out of like ill intention. I think a lot of people do want to help, but I think it's important to know like you need to help on the mom's terms, not on your terms. What you think is help may actually be the complete opposite.
Ugh, that is so real. And again, this is another parallel experience that we've had because I knew right away that I wanted to not be inundated with the 10,000 opinions of what I should be doing and managing people's anxiety and emotions and fucking feelings. It's like, I can't care about you right now. I'm sorry. Like my capacity is so fucking limited and you're just not on that roster of people that I need to give a shit about right now. That's a hard place to be. That's a hard boundary to have. What advice do you have for women who are navigating that where like it's just, how am I okay being the bad guy? How can I be okay with that?
Because you're not being the bad guy. You're being the good guy to your child. You are being the good guy to your child. When you become a mother, that is all that matters is how can you be good, set, happy, joyful, healthy, strong, whatever you need to be a good mom for your child. And so if that means that you need to tell other people, I can't do this right now. If that means that you need to tell other people, you can't come over for 3 months. If that, whatever that means that you need to do, the shift is it's not about the person that you're telling that to. It's about the person that is going to be truly impacted by that, which is your child. Because if you need space from these people, it's because when they're around, you're either going to be anxious, angry, sad, something that ain't what your kid needs. Your kid does not need you anxious, sad, annoyed, angry. Your kid needs you rested, healthy, as joyful as you can be, happy. And because postpartum is already going to give you anxiety and rage and all the other fucking shit. So I don't need anybody else giving me more of the shit that I don't need to make my kid happy and healthy and strong and feel safe. And so that shift, I think, is what helps is think about it. It's not about the person you're telling. It's about the person you're doing it for, right? And that is you and your kid. If you're good, your kid's good. If you're not good, your kid's not as good. And thus, everybody else needs to be positioned where they need to be positioned, period, so that you can be good for your kid. That's it. And you can use that as an explanation. You can be honest. You can be lovingly honest and say, look, What I need to feel at peace, what would help me, how you can help me right now is by giving me space to figure this out on my own. I work best this way.
I love that advice. I really do, because there's something about motherhood that has made me so clear on like where my boundaries are and just like very unapologetic to exercise them in a way that I don't think I had the confidence to before, because it's not even about me at this point. It's about something bigger.
It's funny you should say that, because the last time you and I spoke, we both were like, yeah, because our boundaries. And I had the same experience where it was like, shit, I thought I had boundaries before. When that little thing came out, my boundary, literally, if my world was like this, it now became like
right.
this.
Yes.
Outside of here is everything else. Like, there's only space for me, my dog, and my baby. Like, everything else is outside the boundaries. Sometimes even my husband is outside the boundaries sometimes, where I'm like, here's what I need you to do today. I need you to take this baby and go away. I don't want to leave the house, because a lot of times it's like, oh, there are times that I'm like, I'm going to go for a drive, right? Or like, I'm going to go out and treat myself to soup. That's my favorite thing to do, is go out and eat soup by myself. It's always been like a self-care element of my well-being, even before my husband. But now there's times that I'm like, you and your son need to depart Virginia and leave me and my dog here alone. And I need at least 3 hours. Bye. And that's okay too.
That is absolutely okay. We need to normalize that. It is okay to need space, even from people that you love. And sometimes you need space from your business too. And I think we need to normalize that shit too. So one of the things that I love talking to, especially like entrepreneur moms, is the support system. Because I think there is this myth out here that we are just doing the shit by ourselves, that we're somehow killing it with a team of one. And I know that's all bullshit. So what does your support system look like, and how has it expanded or evolved since you became a mom?
I'm a big supporter of buy your support system. And if you can't buy your support system, then that's all the more reason why your boundaries need to be really clear. It's like, okay, I'm a big supporter of buy your support system, because I like things done the way I like them done, when I like them done that way. And I don't need to explain to you why I want them done that way. I can just tell you, hi, welcome. This is the way I need it done. This is the schedule I want him to follow. I would like him to eat these things. I would like it made in this way. And I like him asleep at this time. And I like him awake at this other time. This is just what I want you to do. Right? That sounds harsh. I don't say it harshly, but the person who helps me, she understands that her job is to follow those instructions. My nanny is, like, after my husband and my son, like, probably the best thing that has ever happened to me. That woman is like, she is God sent to me. Because then when my kid goes to his grandparents and they don't do what I say, and they don't always feed him the thing that I want him to eat or whatever, he watches more TV than I like for him to watch or whatever, it's easier for me to say, oh, he's with his grandparents, it's fine. Like, whatever, right? But if he was always with his grandparents, and I have expectations or desires of how I want my child to be raised, so that he doesn't struggle with eating the way that I did, so that he doesn't struggle with shit nutrition the way that I did, so that he doesn't struggle with a multitude of other things the way that I did. There are systems that I want to put in place for that. And then I have to send him to care with, his grandparents, and they don't do those things. Then the problem is that I have no rest from that. And then I become, you're always doing this. And it's always like, I'm telling you, it has to be this. And so I'm exhausted thinking about it, and I'm not even in that position, but like, I can't imagine having to argue with people so what you do is you make stronger boundaries. And it's like, if you want to be the person who gets to see my son all the time, it needs to be this way. Right? Otherwise, I will find somebody else, and there will be somebody else, right? There's going to be either another grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, a prima, a great friend. Somebody's going to be able to help you and do the thing that you need them to do. But if you are an entrepreneur, I strongly, strongly recommend. We spend so much money on shit we don't need for these kids. My son has like a $5,000 crib. He has slept in it 5 times. He's almost 2. My son has a beautiful matching dresser that's like EUG, no sé qué cosa, whatever, toxic free, no emissions, no sé qué carajo. Doesn't care about it, doesn't use it, doesn't touch it. Like, and I'm not saying don't buy a good crib for your kid. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if you have to choose where your finances are going to be allocated, if you have to choose between like a big expensive thing for your kid or like you have to choose between that and having money to hire somebody to help you, hire somebody to help you, because your kid's not going to give a shit about that crib. Your kid's not going to care about that. My kid has had 5 swings. My kid is 2 years old. He has swung for 5 minutes, 1 minute in each swing. He hates swings. He had 5. Hates swings. Go figure. The only kid that doesn't like to be swung to sleep or swung at all, like never used them. He hated them. You put him on a swing now at the park and he'll be there for an hour. When I need him to not be on the swing, I need him to run so he can tire himself out. He wants to swing now for a fucking hour at the park. Like the things don't matter, right? Like food, diapers, nanny. Everything else is irrelevant, right? Like have your baby shower at a place where it's free. Have your friends potluck, put things on a list, right? Like put the essentials on a list. The extras, put it in a cash. What is it that they call like the honeymoon fund? You know, when you go and you get married and you do a honeymoon fund, have a nanny fund. Have the cash. If you can't allocate for it in your business, prepare for it ahead of time. Tell all your friends, I only want diapers and cash. I'll figure everything else out. That would be my suggestion if you don't have the ability like off the bat to hire somebody, right? Like I think I brought my nanny in right when I came out of maternity leave. The baby, I think, was 6 months or 8 months, 6 to 8 months, I think.
And the best money you've spent, I imagine.
The best money I've ever spent. It's the best hire I've ever had.
That's amazing. And I'm sure you've hired a lot of people.
21 years I've been hiring and firing people. She's the best hire I've ever had.
So, Gigi, I mean, I feel like this conversation could be 3 hours long, and you have so many gems that you've dropped for us just in this short amount of time. I want you to leave us with your best tip for women who need to come to that awareness that it's not if I need to be able to choose motherhood or entrepreneurship, that I can actually probably manage to balance both. But how would you suggest we can go through that exercise of coming to the realization where maybe you do have the space for it?
This is such a good question. I don't think it's so much a realization that you do have the space for it, because I don't want to try to convince anybody of what I think is possible for them. Because if you don't think it's possible for you, then you don't think it's possible for you. And if you don't think it's possible, then it's not. I think it's a decision. You just need to decide. Because I feel like if there's one characteristic that every entrepreneur that I've ever met has, is drive, right? Like the drive to achieve the thing that they want. And so if the thing that you want is to be able to have a business that supports you in motherhood, then decide to build a business that supports you in motherhood, make that decision, and then find the tools, resources, people, whatever that you need to help you build that business in that way. So if you don't think it's possible now, then I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you. I don't have the time. Quickly, when we finish this interview, I have like 2 minutes to go pee and jump in with something else. Like I don't have time to convince you of what's possible for you, sis. That's on you. But if you decide, if you're an entrepreneur, you already have a pair, right? Like you got the ovaries, the desire, the impetus, the push, the resilience to accomplish things, or else you would have stayed in corporate just doing what you were told to do. So use that and decide, I want the type of business that helps me, that pays for me to be a mom that feels 1, 2, and 3, whatever your top 3 things. I need to feel peaceful. I need to feel spiritually connected, and I need to feel joyful. Those are my 3 musts. When any of those 3 things stop feeling like I stop feeling those 3 ways, I step back and I'm like, something is getting in my way. It's either my time management, my people, what I'm saying yes to, like whatever it is. And then I recalibrate. I know how I want to feel in motherhood. I know the kind of mom I want to be. So decide, what kind of mom do you want to be? And what do you need the business to do for you to accomplish that? And then once you decide that, then find the resource. There's resources. There's people who've already accomplished and built the thing that you want to build. Get with those people and have them help you. Buy the books, watch the thing, read the movies, watch the movies, read the books, like be resourced, figure it out.
I love that. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're already one step ahead of the game, because we're literally introducing you to all these badass mujeres who are doing the exact thing that we're talking about, which is building businesses that allow you to thrive in all ways and even in motherhood. So Gigi, tell us where we can find you, how folks can work with you. Your energy is infectious, and I know people are going to want to get all up in your aura, in your energy.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you. You can find me at GiGi Diaz Live or at Seizing Happy, which is my company's name. And the way that you can work with me right now, I have my signature program, which is exactly what I'm talking about right now, is building a simple business system. That's the name of the program, Simple Business System. And I teach you to create a business that has profitable simplicity. So no complicated shit, just easy sales, easy marketing, easy, spacious business ownership. Because when I became a mom, that's what I realized I needed the most. I needed to simplify everything. I needed everything to just be easier. I didn't want complexity. I didn't want heavy duty. I wanted easy. And so that's what I coach in. And it's so yummy.
We will have all those resources linked in the episode show notes. GiGi, again, thank you so much for being here. And thanks for giving us the reassurance that we don't have to choose. We can design a life that feels full and sees you're happy.
Thank you for creating this space, because there's a lot of moms out there who are not having the hardcore conversations. Everyone just wants to either bitch and moan and stay in the misery, or pretend that there is no misery. And it's neither or. Like it's both, right? Like there's tough moments, and then there's the we can do this moments. And not a lot of women are creating the space the way that you are for us to come together and talk it out loud. So thank you.
Thank you so much.